Hello and welcome to Take 10, Esther Part 4. In Esther Part 3, we see that Esther cared. She was curious and cautious. She called for a fast, and this made her confident to go before King Ahasuerus. Today we're going to start in Esther 5. And it says, on the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner chamber of the king's palace. Remember, she had determined that she would go before the king to help the Jewish people, her people, even if it meant she would be killed. This brings us to the first point. Esther beautified herself and was patient. She had gone before Father, fasting and praying. How important is that? That is so important for us to fast and pray also. Now she stood patiently waiting for the king to acknowledge her and to hold out his golden scepter to her. Do you think she was nervous? I would have been. Maybe she was nervous also, but she knew she was doing what God had her to do. She knew that God was her refuge and her strength, and she was going to follow him. And when the king saw Esther standing in the court, she won favor in his sight. Now, we've heard this before. She won favor of other people also. So we know that God's hand is upon Esther. The king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. Then Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. She had a plan, but she had to approach the king before it could even be put into motion. When we're given a plan, we need to take it before Father and seek his wisdom to know if our plan is of him or if it is of ourselves. The king said, "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given to you, even to the half of my kingdom." Esther replied that she would like the king and Haman to come to a banquet made just for them. Esther was prepared for an answer for the king. Now, when we are given a task, do we prepare or are we just willy-nilly? Do we have an "oh, whatever" kind of attitude, or do we have our ducks in a row? We need to be prepared when God gives us something that we are to do. That doesn't mean to overthink it. That doesn't mean to say, "Oh man, I am not this kind of person." Because where God is and where he has a plan for you, he'll make a way for you also. At the feast, the king once again asked Esther what he could do for her. She replied, "If I have found favor in your sight, and if it please the king to grant my wish and fulfill my request, let the king and Haman come to the feast that I will prepare for them, and tomorrow I will do as the king has said." You know, when I think of this, it seems to me like, whoa, Esther is kind of pushing her luck, asking them to come to another feast. But then again, she has a purpose. And after seeking Father's face, I am sure she was being led by him. Now, the rest of the story is that the king agreed. Haman was so excited to be asked a second time by the queen to come to a feast. Haman let this go to his head. But then he left the palace, and when he saw Mordecai on his way home, he became very depressed. Haman's hatred for the Jewish people was so heavy that even this invitation from the queen didn't help when Haman saw Mordecai. When Haman went home and spoke with his wife, she told Haman to build a 50-foot gallows to hang Mordecai to make a spectacle of him in front of all of the people. So even though it looked bad for the Jewish people at this time, even though Esther was working and doing her part, Haman was making plans of his own. He was going to take out this Jewish person and then annihilate the rest of them because of his sheer hatred. But God was working a plan behind the scenes, only something that God could orchestrate. You see, that night, King Ahasuerus could not sleep and ordered that the book of memorable deeds the book of the Chronicles be brought to him, and they were read aloud to him. You will never guess what was read that night to the king. It was Esther chapter 6. It was found written how Mordecai had told about Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs who guarded the threshold and who had sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. The king said, "What honor or distinction has been bestowed on Mordecai for this?" The king's young men who attended him said, "Nothing has been done for him." And the king said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the king's palace to speak to the king about having Mordecai hanged on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's young men told him, "Haman is there standing in the court." And the king said, "Well, let him come in." So Haman came in, and the king said to him, "What should be done to the man whom the king delights to honor?" And Haman said to himself, "Whom would the king delight to honor more than me?" And Haman said to the king, "For the man whom the king delights to honor, let royal robes be brought, which the king has worn, and the horse that the king has ridden, and on whose head a royal crown is set. And let the robes and the horse be handed over to the one of the king's most noble officials. Let them dress the man whom the king delights to honor, and let them lead him on the horse through the square of the city, proclaiming before him, 'Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor.'" Then the king said to Haman, "Hurry, take the robes and the horse as you have said, and do so to Mordecai the Jew, who sits at the king's gates. Leave out nothing that you have mentioned." So Haman took the robes and the horse, and he dressed Mordecai and led him through the square of the city, proclaiming before him, "Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor." Oh, how Haman must have hated that. He thought he was the one king that the king wanted to honor. And then for Haman to have to honor Mordecai in front of everyone? Wow, God was working out everything. Tomorrow we're going to finish Esther's story. However, today, are you seeking Father about something? Are you being patient and working on a plan? Are you preparing and doing what His purpose is for you to do? Seek Father and ask, "Father, what do you have for me to do today?" I hope this finds an encouraging portion into your heart. And if it does, please like, subscribe, share this with other people who might need. Maybe they're seeking God and they don't know what to do. Follow the story of Esther. Be like Esther. I hope you have a great day today. Until next time, many blessings to you.